I gave you my heart.
Hi guys, so welcome back sa ating YouTube channel. So ito na yung last topic para sa ating continuous random variable or sa ating chapter 5. Okay, so in this chapter we will discuss about the distribution of a function of a random variable. Although napag-usapan na natin kung ano yung gagawin dito, so ito yung parang relationship lang ni PDF sa kani CDF. Pero in this case, siyempre medyo magiging specific tayo kasi ang goal natin is simply ilagyan natin ng isang density function in a term, in a sense na siya ay piecewise function. So ito yung parang mga theorem lang about doon. So baka mas special case kung paano natin siya isa-solve. Okay, so kung nalilito ka doon sa ating mga previous na method kung paano ginagawa, so baka ito makatulong sa ating pag-derive. So now, example, let x be uniformly distributed over 0, 1. So obtain the distribution of the random variable y, which is random variable y defined by y is equal to x raised to n for 0 is less than or equal to y, less than or equal to 1. Okay, so kung naalala mo ano yung method 1 natin dati, yung method 1 natin is mag-i-start tayo dun sa ating CDF. Okay, so similar pa rin yung case na gagawin natin dito. We start with the CDF. Okay, so we start with the probability or the cumulative distribution function of y. So bakit y ginamit? Kasi y yung dinideclare niya dito. Okay, the cumulative distribution function of y. Okay, kasi y yung hinahanap. So, therefore, this is just equal sa, ang sabi nga ni sir, this is just the probability of capital Y less than or equal sa y. Kung paano siya basahin. Okay, next is, note that y is equal to x raised to n. Okay, so this is just equal sa probability ng x raised to n less than or equal to y. So, paano natin matatanggal yung n dyan? So, para matanggal yung n dyan is ikunin natin yung nth root or simply erase natin sa 1 over n both sides. So, pag na-erase natin by 1 over n both sides, this is just equal sa probability of x less than or equal sa y raised sa 1 over n. Okay? Now, since nagpalit na tayo ng random variable, so napansin mo, from y naging x na siya. So, pwede na natin itong palitan from f of x. So, this is just f sub x of y raised to 1 over n. Okay, so f of x equal to y raised to 1 over n. So ngayon, ito yung problema. Since alam natin na si x is uniformly distributed over 1, 0, 1, okay, so ano yung density function ng f of x? Ang density function ng f of x natin is simply, tandaan, lagay ko lang to as red ang density function natin ng f of x, ang density function ng f of x natin is simply 1 over b minus a. Kung naalala nyo, that is simply 1 minus b minus a, or simply that is simply 1. Okay, so ang density function natin is just simply 1. Ngayon, ano yung CDF? Ang CDF is pag in-integrate. Ang integral niya with respect sa x is just, o yung PDF niya of f of x is just simply x. So therefore, ano to? So f sub x of x is simply x. Therefore, this is f sub x of y raised to 1 over n. This is just simply, so this is just simply f sub y of y is just simply y raised to 1 over n. So ginamit ko yung idea. So ito na may idea na kung saan, okay, gamit si uniformly distributed o yung kanyang density function na ito, nakuha ko yun. Okay, so now, ready na tayong hanapin yung kanyang density function kasi obtain the distribution of the random variable y. So ito na yung distribution function niya. So okay na tayo sa CDF. Okay, ito yung CDF. Okay, next is the density function. Para sa density function, kunin ko lang yung derivative neto. So, differentiate ko lang siya with respect sa y. So, this is just f sub y. So, f capital Y to dapat f sub y of y is just equal sa, ano derivative ng y raised to 1 over n? Ang derivative niyan is bababa yung 1 over n, then y raised sa 1 over n minus 1. Kung tama ako ng pagkaka-solve. Okay, so that is 1 over n minus 1. Okay, so now, since density function, tapos galing sa uniformly distributed function, kung napansin mo, si uniformly distributed function, kung si x is uniformly distributed, si y uniformly distributed din. Okay, so again, uniformly distributed din siya over 0, 1. So meaning, ang magiging density function natin o yung PDF natin actually, yung PDF natin in sense, dapat f sub y of y is just equal sa yung may otherwise o yung parang piecewise function. This is just 1 over n, then y raised sa 1 over n minus 1 for 0 is less than or equal to y less than or equal to 1, then 0 otherwise. Okay, kasi, sir, bakit may otherwise? Kaya siya may otherwise, kasi may otherwise si uniformly distributed. So, dapat may otherwise din siya, kasi dun siya nanggaling. Okay, so therefore, ito yung ating PDF. So, yung nagkamali lang akong type dyan, kasi sabi distribution lang. So, sabi since distribution lang hanap, dapat ito lang, CDF. Pero ginawa ko, sinolve ko na rin si PDF para makita nyo rin yung pinagkaiba nila. Although, paulit-ulit natin siyang ginagawa. So, now, punta tayo dito sa next. So, ito talaga totoo. So, if x is a continuous random variable with probability density function of f sub x. Okay, so kung napansin mo, continuous random variable, hindi sinabi kung exponential, uniform, or something na normal. Okay, so walang sinabi kung ano man siya. Then, find the distribution and density of y is equal to x squared for y is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so ganun, we start again with this part. So, start again with this part. So, probability of y. So, f sub y of y. Doon yung pinakamagandang start na gagawin sa ganitong case. So, consider f sub y of y. F sub y of y is just equal sa probability of y less than or equal sa y. Note that this is just the probability of simply this is just x squared less than or equal to y. Okay, next is simply square root natin both sides kasi x yung hinahanap. So, this is just probability of x less than or equal sa square root of y. Okay, so now from there, pwede na natin siyang gawing, okay. So, ito yung medyo tricky. No? So, kung napapansin mo, x squared is less than or equal to y. So, pag in-square root ko siya, dalawa yung possible value niya. It's either positive or negative, supposedly. Tama? So, it's either positive or negative y. So, hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na ganyan. So, again, pag in-square root mo something, ito gagawin. This is just equal sa probability of negative square root of y less than or equal sa x. Less than or equal sa square root of y. Okay? So, kung aware ka doon, pag nag-square root ka ng variable, kunin mo yung positive and negative. Pag nag-square root ka ng number, kunin mo yung positive. So, square root for 2. Kasi number lang eh. Pero since ito ay may variable or something parang equation, pag nag-square root ako ng equation, kunin ko yung pagiging negative, yung less than. Tapos, inequality din siya eh. Okay, again, sir, bakit naging less than yung square root of negative? Inequality. Yung negative square root of y, mas maliit siya doon dapat kay x. Okay, so, note na ito yung kanyang probability. So, now, ano yung ibig sabihin? So, apply ulit natin yung property na kung saan, ano yung property na yun? Yung property na pag meron kang probability of A less than or equal sa X, less than or equal sa B, this is just equal sa F of B minus F of A. So, apply ko yan. This is just F kasi babalik ko na sa F. So, this is F sub X. So, this is just equal sa, so, red pala ito dapat. This is just equal sa F sub X of square root of Y. Kasi yun yung malaki. Minus f sub x of negative square root of y. Okay, so therefore this is just the density. This is the CDF. F sub y of y. Okay, so ito yung CDF. So sir, wala ka po ipapalit? Yes, wala akong ipapalit. Why? Kasi wala namang sinabi kung anong klaseng random variable siya or continuous random variable siya. So since walang sinabi, alam ko na ganyan lang. Okay, so alam ko na ganyan siya. So yan lang yung ilalagay ko. Okay, so next is the density function. So differentiate lang natin. So differentiate lang natin to. So this is just simply small f of y. So small f of y, f sub y of y is just equal sa f sub x. So differentiate ko siya, that is small x. Small f rather. So of x of square root of y times the derivative. Okay, so with respect tayo sa y, again, pag nag-differentiate ka with respect sa variable sa loob, ang variable sa loob is y. Okay, so f sub x of square root of y times derivative nung derivative with respect sa y, derivative with respect sa y ng square root of y. Okay, then minus, this is f sub x of negative square root of y times derivative with respect sa y ng negative square root of y. Okay, so ang obvious na ang sagot is just simply, ang derivative ng square root of y is 1 over 2 square root of y. Okay, then dito is 1 negative 1 over 2 square root of y. So this is just simply equal sa f sub y of y is equal sa 1 over 2 square root of y tas f sub x of square root of y. Okay, so saan ko nakuha to? Sa derivative nun. Minus 1 over 2 square root of y multiplied by, so f sub x of negative square root of y. Okay, so therefore, ito na yung kanyang density function. So sir, ba't hindi mo kailangan lagyan ng otherwise? Kasi hindi natin alam kung ano yung pinanggalingan niya. So for convenience, ito lang yung ilalagay natin. Okay, saka y is greater than equal to 0 lang. So strictly lang talaga siya doon. Okay, so ito lang yung kanyang CDF. Okay, so punta tayo sa next example. So next is, if x has a probability density function f sub x, find the density function of y is equal to absolute value of x whenever y is greater than or equal to 0. So in this case, hindi importante si CDF. Although pagdadaanan natin muna si CDF. So again, same set or same setup kung paano gagawin. So f sub y, so f sub y of y is equal to the probability of y less than or equal to y. So next is siyempre substitute natin. No? This is just absolute value of x. Okay, so this is just equal sa probability of absolute value of the random variable x less than or equal to y. Okay, so note na hindi, I don't know kung alam nyo to, pero nagawa yata natin last time sa ating. So kung meron kang x minus 3, absolute value ng x minus 3 greater than 9, ano nangyari? Nahati. Okay, so now, kung meron ka naman absolute value, kung meron kang absolute value of a is less than or equal sa c, this is just equal sa negative c less than or equal sa a less than or equal sa positive c. Okay, so pakitandaan yung property na yan. Okay, so in this case, ganun yung gagawin natin. So this is just the probability. This is just the probability of negative y less than or equal sa x less than or equal sa y. Then apply natin ulit yung same setup na kung saan that is f sub x of square root of y. So this is just equal sa, so f sub y of y is just equal sa f sub x of y minus f sub x of negative y. So this is the CDF. Okay, at hindi siya importante actually. Bakit? Kasi ang hinahanap is just the density function. So now, after obtaining this part, we are now ready to differentiate. So differentiating this side, or for the PDF, this is just f sub y of y is just equal sa, with respect sa y, differentiate with respect sa y. So this is just f sub x of y, then derivative with respect sa y of y minus small f of x of negative y times the derivative with respect sa y of negative y. Okay, so note that derivative of y with respect sa y is 1, derivative of negative y with respect sa y is negative 1. So magiging positive to. So therefore, the density function or the PDF is just f sub y of y is just equal sa f sub x of y minus or plus f sub x of negative y. So therefore, ito yung ating magiging sagot. Okay, then don't forget to write yung ating, sabi no, so since density function, lagay natin to. So this is just for y greater than or equal to 0. So huwag kalimutan yung condition. Also dito sa part na to, no, for y is greater than or equal to 0. So isa rin sa hahanapin ko yan. Ba-minusan kita pag wala yan. Okay, so tandaan yan. So again, bakit wala agad siyang otherwise? Kasi hindi sinabi kung siya ay uniform, continuous, hindi tayo familiar. Yun ang ibig sabihin na sir. Okay, so pwede mo naman lagay yung otherwise pag y is less than 0. Pero since hindi tayo familiar, wag mo na ilagay. Okay, so now, doon tayo sa last part, doon sa theorem. So para mapadali yung ating ginagawa. So let's have theorem 9.1. So, theorem 9.1. So, let x be a continuous random variable having a probability density function of f sub x. So, suppose that g of x is strictly monotonic or increasing and decreasing. So, again, pag sinabing monotonic, a function that is strictly increasing or decreasing. So, ibig sabihin yung graph it's either paangat or pababa. Something na ganun. So, si parabola or si something si x squared, that is not an monotonic function. Why? Kasi ang graph niya is something parabolic. Okay, so may pataas, may pababa. So hindi natin siya pwede sabihing monotonic. Okay, so monotonic is strictly increasing or decreasing. Okay, so magkaiba sila. Now, differentiating, so differentiable. So again, another is differentiable din dapat si g of x and thus continuous. So since differentiable siya ay continuous, so mababanggit siya sa advanced calculus na pag sinabing pag isang function is differentiable, therefore siya ay continuous. Okay, pero hindi lahat ng continuous is differentiable. Or sorry, lahat ng continuous is differentiable, pero may theorem na something na alam ko sa integral yata yun. So saka natin pag-usapan. So, nasingit ko lang. So, then, the random variable y, defined by y is equal to g of x, or the random variable x, has a probability density function given by f sub y of y is equal to f sub x of g inverse of y, then derivative with respect sa y na g inverse of y. If y is equal to g of x. So, ayun nga, kung kaya mong i-represent si y sa g of x, so tulad nga na itong mga example natin, so pwede mo siyang i-represent na lang eh. Kung ito yung g of x yung x raised to n. Okay, yung x raised to n, ang gagawin lang natin, simply, ipa-plug lang natin sa formula. So, ipa-plug lang natin sa formula, that is f sub x of g of x. Kung ba, ita-substitute ko siya sa original function times the derivative niya, derivative nung inverse na yun. Okay, so yung gagawin. Then 0, otherwise, for all x. So, mamaya apply natin yan para magamit natin. Okay, so now, where g inverse of y is defined to equal that value of x such that g of x is equal to y. So, ang problema is something na, sir, paano nangyari yan? Pwede ba natin i-prove? So, ako pwede ko naman siya i-prove. Napaikli lang naman talaga totally ng kanyang proving. Okay, so for the proof, ano yung gagawin natin? This is just the proof. So, suppose that y is equal to g of x. Okay, so for some x lang. Okay, then, lagay ko lang. Then, with y is equal to g of x. So, ito yung sinasabi niyan. So, sinet ko siya. Y is equal to g of x. So, pwede kong hanapin. Yung f sub y of y, which is, this is just equal sa probability of y less than or equal sa y. So, ito yung ginagawa natin. And this is just equal sa probability of g of x less than or equal to y. Okay, so now, ito tayo dito sa kabila. So, parang scratch. Kung meron akong g of x is equal to y, ang x is just equal sa g inverse of y. Okay, so from set theory or from function. Okay, so property ng function yan. So, kunin ko yung inverse, ito yung inverse niya. Okay, so ang gagawin ko, kunin ko yung inverse na to. So, in which, ano mangyari? This is just equal sa probability of capital X na siya less than or equal sa G inverse of Y. Okay, next is ibalik na natin sa pagiging probability. So, this is just the probability of X of G inverse of Y. Okay, so ano ba goal ng proof natin? Ang goal ng proof natin is dapat makuha natin to. Okay, so note, ito yung f sub y. So note, ito yung f sub y of y. So differentiating both sides, this is just, pag derivative, this is just f sub y of y equal sa, itong part na to is f sub x pa rin. Okay, so f sub x pa rin siya. Or sorry, pag dinifferentiate, liliit siya. So, small f of g inverse of y. Okay, then derivative ng g inverse. So, this is multiplied by derivative with respect sa y ng g inverse of y. Okay, so napapansin mo, na ba yun? So, f sub x of g inverse of y multiplied by the derivative. So, derivative, so ang sinabi lang absolute value, derivative with respect sa y na g inverse of y. Okay? So, therefore, this is just true. So, therefore, this is done. So, nakuha ko yung goal ng theorem. So, again, ano lang yung formula? Ang gawin mo lang, kunin mo lang yung density function of x, g inverse of y, then times the derivative ng d, times the derivative or the absolute value of d, g inverse of y. Okay? So, para mas madali. Ang ginagol lang niya, kunin mo yung inverse function. So, for example, dito sa case na to, kunin mo lang yung inverse function of x. Ang inverse function of x is simply nth root of y. Ayun yun. Y raised to 1 over n. Yun yung inverse function. So, input plug mo lang sa function. Next dito, ang inverse function nito is square root of x. Okay, or square root of y rather. Square root of y. So, square root of y, ano, nakita mo, square root of y, square root of y, tapos ito yung derivative nun. Derivative ng square root of y. So, pinagkaiba lang dito is something may minus. So, kasi nakita natin na negative something siya. Okay, so, similar din dito. Okay, kasi absolute value siya. So, dapat talaga magdalawa or maghiwalay. Okay, so tuloy tayo. So example, so let x be a continuous non-negative random variable with density function f. Okay, with density function f. And let y is equal to x raised to n. So find f sub y, the probability density function of y. Okay, so yun yung kailangan nating hanapin. So although alam na natin yung method natin ng una, so gawin natin yung method ng sinasabi yung theorem 9.1. So if we let x raised to n, g of x, so solution. So again, alam na natin yung density function nito. So aside dyan, ang density function niya is something na ganyan. 1 over n y raised to 1 over n minus 1. Okay, so x square ba yung given? O, tama, ayun, 1 over n yan, something ganyan. So, dapat yan yung lalabas, density function. Okay, so, check natin kung lalabas yan. So, solution, this is just, ililet natin. So, if g of x is simply equal to x raised to n. Okay, if g of x is equal to x raised to n. Okay, so, g of x is equal to x raised to n, then, by theorem, pwede natin kunin si g inverse of y is equal sa y raised to 1 over n. So, kunin ko yung inverse kasi nito. So, kung ito yung g, ang inverse niya is y raised to 1 over n. So, kasi yun yung inverse niya, inverse function sa isa't isa. Okay? So, ayun yung gagawin. So, ito yung inverse function. So, now, may inverse function na tayo. Ano lang kailangan natin? Yung inverse function na yan, ipa-plug in lang natin sa formula. So, ito na yung formula. Yung f sub y of y. So, using theorem 9.1. So, using theorem 9.1, yung f sub y of y is just equal sa f sub x. So, it's just equal sa f sub x of g inverse of y multiplied by absolute value ng derivative with respect sa y ng g inverse of y. Okay, so ayun na, given na g inverse of y, ito yun, y raised to n. Tapos yung g inverse of y is y raised to 1 over n. Okay, so papalitan lang natin lahat yan. This is just equal sa f sub x of y raised to 1 over n multiplied by derivative ng y raised to 1 over n is simply 1 over n, then derivative nung g raised to 1 minus over n. Okay, so derivative ng g raised to 1 minus y, so actually palit ko muna, no? So derivative with respect sa y ng ano ba yun? This is y raised to 1 over n. Okay, so apply ko muna pala by the way. So, kung may derivative nun is just f sub x of y raised to 1 over n multiplied by 1 over n tapos y raised to 1 over n minus 1. So, lagay ko lang sa unahan. This is just f sub y of y. Okay, so wala naman sinabi na siya ay uniform random variable. So, wala akong kailangan pag-usapan doon. So, this is just equal sa 1 over n y raised to 1 over n minus 1 tapos f sub x of y raised to 1 over n. So, ito yung kanyang PDF. So, ano napansin mo? Hindi tayo dumaan sa CDF. So, automatic, gamit yung theorem 9.1, gamitin mo yung formula, automatic tayo papunta sa PDF. So, again, pwede mong gamitin yung formula para lang ma-skip mo si CDF. Pero pag sinabi kong hanapin mo rin si CDF, sir, paano hanapin CDF? Pwede mong gawin yung unang method or integrate mo afterwards. Pag ginamit na yung theorem 9.1, deep integrate mo to afterwards, yun naman yung kanyang CDF. Okay, so kayo nang bahala about doon. So again, hindi ko siya nilagyan ng otherwise. Why? Kasi hindi na siya dinistinguish kung uniform random variable siya. Okay, so again, that's all. Thank you for watching. Hoping na marami kang natutunan para sa chapter na to. Then hoping na panoorin mo pa yung mga next chapter natin. So actually, target ko na sana makadalawang chapter pa tayo, pero basically, alam ko na lang is yung last chapter. Pero pag napag-aralan ko yung chapters 7 or I guess chapter 8, kung ano man yun, is tuturo ko rin yung dadagdag ko sa ating mga topic. Kasi napaka-importante rin ni covariance. Okay, so again, thank you for watching. Hoping na marami kang natutunan dito.